WV Uncommonplace. This podcast is a variety podcast that houses numerous series to cover mental health, empowerment, podcast framework, and various intimate theories to get to know the hosts, along with occasional movies reviews and dives in pop culture with our event podcast episodes. The Uncommonplace digs into bringing guests on that stories don't fit the mold and are very different. WV stands for the great state of West Virginia, and every quarter we cover something in West Virginia. Stacey and myself, JR, are your hosts, so please come along for this venture to Uncommonplace.
Howdy, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good night, or if you're just listening, I'm glad you're listening right now. Today's episode, this is an interesting one. This one is an episode to me by proxy. A little bit of a home searching I did that we just were I made my guest aware of actually involved her company without us knowing, and when I found that there was an opportunity for her to be a guest on the show, by a pitch being sent to me, I was like, what? And it gripped me. And this lady has an amazing story to tell, and she has a new book out. She has a journey inside this book and an expertise that everyone needs to hear and know about. So, without any more interlude or dialogue that I want to keep doing, I would like to introduce my first guest. Her name is Betsy Pepine, and I know I chopped it up, so I'm going to let her say it correctly.
Betsy Pepine.
Pepine. I'm sorry, Betsy. And Betsy Pepine runs an amazing real estate company in an amazing area in Florida. First off, I didn't know how Florida was broken up, but there's a central part of Florida. In Central Florida, to me, because I've traveled all over the state and I've traveled 48 states with my job and just with my life, Central Florida is the prettiest and the most majestic for me. I mean, you can go further south and you may have better beaches down there, but you got to contend with all that major crazy weather too. So, Betsy, the floor is yours, and the most nostalgic question we ask is, "Who are you?" So, could you take the floor and tell us who you are and why you're here today?
Sure. So I don't like to define myself by what I do, but who I am. And so I would describe myself as a wanderer, somebody who's just incredibly curious about everything and very always wanting to understand people and things and processes and how things work and how we work and why we do what we do. It to make a living during the day, I do things in real estate. I consider myself a serial entrepreneur. I have a brokerage and a title company and a property management company and a real estate school, and also a nonprofit that really speaks to my heart. And we address affordable housing in Central Florida because we live in an area where we have the highest cost burden percentage of families in our area in the entire state, which means that when you look at the median income in our area and the median cost of housing, there's the greatest gap in our area. So our nonprofit helps address that and helps make houses more affordable to a segment of the population that wouldn't normally utilize our services. So that's kind of what I do during the day. But my passion is truly, I've always joked, if somebody would pay me just to be a full-time student, I would be the first one to raise my hand because I just love to learn.
Okay. So now, Betsy, when someone looks at your life from the outside in, probably a good portion of it, they consider, you've had a pretty perfect life, a successful career, great kids, everything that aligns with success. But it seems at some point, I guess you maybe felt unhappy. What was a turning point that made you realize something had to change in your life, even though from the outside looking in, it looks like you have the perfect life?
Yeah, I had checked off all the boxes of what I believe society, media, friends, family, peers told me that's success. And so I was always going for the next milestone, the next accolade, the next sales number, trying to achieve more and more, which I'm incredibly blessed by the support of the community. But I found that I wasn't happy. And about 7 years ago, the feeling, it wasn't one moment, but it was just this general unease in my body, and I couldn't ignore it any longer. And so I went on a journey of therapy and meditation and yoga and EMDR and bioenergetic work, and just a array of different modalities to try to figure out what this source of discontentment was. And the common thread was, for me, this feeling of confinement, this feeling that in various parts of my life, I was feeling confined by the expectations of the roles that I was playing, of other people's opinions, and not really reflecting on what is best for me. What do I want to do? What do I want to be? And so slowly started to dismantle the boxes that I felt were confining me. And as I shared my stories, other people shared their stories, and it was such an interesting. I think sometimes we feel like we're isolated and we're unique, and we're experiencing this, and we're by ourselves and lonely in the experience. And what I found was quite the opposite. It's really the experience of the human condition, and we're all put in boxes, various different boxes, and they change throughout our lives, and they change based on our circumstances and demographics and gender and race and all of that. But the central idea is the same, and the feelings are the same. And so I ended up writing a book, really just to help people. Everyone, when they heard I was writing a book, assumed it was going to be some lead gen book for my real estate businesses. And it's not that at all. It's really just to help people, because I was at a point where I wanted help. And I knew if I had had a book that addressed this topic, it would have meant so much to me. And so I wrote that book to help other people.
Okay, so these metaphorical boxes you're talking about, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which one of these boxes had the biggest impact on your life when you started writing this book?
The one that had the biggest impact was and it was lingering. I had exited out of it. But this feeling of not being enough because of familial, I grew up in a family that the expectation was that my parents' children were going to be physicians. That's what, that was the model. That was, my dad was a physician. We grew up working alongside him. We all went to my sisters and I went to the same college. We were all pre-med. They went on to be physicians. They ended up marrying physicians. So I felt tremendous pressure to be one as well. I think part of it was put on me, but I think part of it I put on myself. And there was definitely the messaging that if I wasn't a physician, anything else was just this huge step below my potential, my status in society. It was definitely considered not different, but a step down. And I ended up switching out of the pre-med track in college, but I had this lingering feeling of not being enough because I wasn't the physician that was expected of me. So that, I think, was probably the biggest one that's impacted my life. Through therapy and through reading and through journaling and through meditation, I've definitely come full circle and very comfortable now where I'm at. But that was the one that box really was the one that had the biggest impact on me. But other ones too, being the good mom, being the good wife, being the good daughter. A lot of different roles we play have this adjective attached to it. And what does that mean to others? I remember when I had my children, I was just so surprised that the minute you have children, people start judging your parenting. And that was shocking to me, and what it means to be a quote unquote good mom versus not a good mom. And, I had some more, I don't want to say radical, but I was the opposite of a helicopter parent. And that was not common when I was raising my children, and it raised eyebrows. But I decided that, and this was a hard one for me, but I decided I don't care what other people think about my parenting. My sole objective was, what does the end result, what was my end goal of parenting? And my two goals were to raise two daughters that were independent and confident. And that was it. If they got a C on a report card, I was fine with that. It was, I could help them get A's, but I wasn't going to do it for them. And so that was a radical deviation from how I was raised. It raised eyebrows, but anyway, just the roles that anybody has roles. And then when you assign that adjective good to it, there's this whole, set of expectations that come with that may not align with how you believe in your values, that you might have to either fight against or placate. So those are some of the boxes that have confined me. And the gender one, for sure, being a female, even in real estate, where most people think, well, females dominate real estate. It's definitely a female friendly industry. Brokers, there's still more male brokers than female brokers. And so I'm still in a male dominated subcategory of real estate. But I definitely feel in a box based on my gender in my industry. Yeah.
Oh, and on that one, I thank you for that, because raising the daughters and stuff, and I like how you didn't want to fit into certain types of conformities, because doing that would take away from who you are today. So thank you for that one there. Now, all this stuff, you talked about some modalities that you use to open you up. Now, when you use these things to open you up, like at what point did you reclaim or did you develop a new authenticity to yourself? Because me, I found this in the business world, because we both work in business world. When I transformed from the guy, I worked for another company, another big box company, the biggest one in the United States, and that doesn't have to say any names, and you know who that is. I went from them to the company I work for now, which is still a big company, but I mean, I was with the biggest employer in the United States, and I traveled everywhere. And when I changed, I noticed that I was more relaxed. I didn't have the pressures of, fitting into a form, because the company I work for now, we all know, has a great service motto and things there that it's brought a better life to myself. And I've only been with them for the last 3 years. So I kind of can see like how you had to change, not, in a not like a lot of similarities, but I can understand, having to change like that. It's almost like being, I guess, what do I want to say with that? Like the transformation process for you. It's kind of like you were probably cramped up in a corner or something, and then you just opened up, or you expanded, or you moved into your full potential that you saw, even though your parents and other people thought that you should have been a doctor, or you should have been a physician, a physician, or doing something like that. You knew that you were going to be different. You knew you were crafted and branded different, and you held on to that, and you stayed with that. And I thank you for that. So here's one thing I need you to do for me real quick. So you wrote a book. We're going to go into that in a moment, but I need you to do something for the listeners real quick. I need them to do this thing we call the shameless plug. We've been doing the shameless plug for this show for so long. Can you tell them where they can meet and greet you across the internet or via
Sure.
email?
Yeah. So I have a website, which is my name, www.betsypepine.com. And then I'm on all the social channels with my name, Betsy Pepine, except for TikTok. TikTok, I'm Gainesville Realtor. But everybody else is Betsy Pepine.
Go Gators. So here's the advice I want you to help me and the listeners with. We're stuck. I'm stuck even right now, because where you talked about these boxes, family, society, religion, and even yourself. Sometimes we don't even know that we're living in those things. Like I know that like a box for me is travel. I travel 10 months out of the year. The 2 months that I actually stay home, it's odd, because I'm, obviously I told you I want to be between two states. I want to eventually own two houses in two states, just because I travel north and south. I don't do east and west, but still I know that one of my boxes is that I make time for things that make time for me. And if something doesn't, like my harsh toxic trait is that I will put it back, or take it stage left, or put it back in my memories museum. So my question to you is, how do I realize, that I have these boxes, like, or that I'm living in these boxes? What is the step that I can take to just stop for a minute and figure out that this is a box?
That's a great question, because I think a lot of people are in boxes, myself included, that you're not even aware that you're in the boxes. For me, the first sign is in your body. Your body will warn you before your mind. And so just making and this for me was a journey in and of itself, because it wasn't something that I was taught and didn't learn about and didn't read about until later in life, but getting really in touch with how you feel and your emotions. I was raised where it was always, what do you think, Betsy? What do the facts tell you? Let's make a scientific decision. When your body tells you so much, and it knows before your mind does. So I've gone on an exploration and really just a lot of coursework on feelings and emotions. And I have an app, the app How We Feel. It's a free app available to anybody, and it checks in with me several times a day. And it forces me to stop, pause, press up, it has all these different options for feelings. And then you get to put in your environment that you're in at the moment and who you're with and what you're doing. And you can start seeing trends over time as to what people and environments, what brings you joy and what lifts you and what's dragging you down. So that would be the first step, is just get more in tune with how you feel. And it's so simple. You move toward that which makes you feel good, and away from that which makes you feel bad. So that would be the very first step. I think once we're aware of the boxes that we're in, then you have to tackle, because you do see people, and myself again included, you're in a box, it's not serving you, but you're not leaving the box. You've kind of hunkered down, and that's usually fear-based. There's some kind of fear is your obstacle to making the steps necessary to extricate yourself from that box.
Okay. Now, after writing this book, obviously we were talking about processes and things being systematic. So you have this process of uncovering, dismantling one of some of your metaphorical boxes, just like you did right there for us. So I want to thank you for that. Now, the aspect I want to talk about real quick is you have many titles. The newest title you have is an author. Writing a book.
Mhm.
What was the most challenging part about writing this book? Because when you write a book, because I've written one too, you take your personal journey, and at the same time, you get another role. You become your own therapist to a degree.
Mhm.
So, how did you balance all of that when you were writing this book?
So that's a great question. See, if I had written the lead gen book that everybody thought I was going to write, that would have been very easy. I do that in my sleep. I do it every day. It's not personal. It's not vulnerable. So, but for me, I didn't want to write that book. I wanted to be vulnerable, because that's what caught me up in these boxes, as I wasn't my authentic self. And so part of writing that book was me shouting out to the world, this is really who I am, and getting out of each of these boxes. So it required for me, it's just a tremendous amount of courage, because I'm a very private person. I'm very introverted. And then to share this with the world, I did hire a writing coach, and she said, because I was stuck at one point, she said, Betsy, pretend like no one's going to read this. No one's going to read it. Write as though no one was going to read it. So I wrote it thinking, oh, I'll just come back and change things. And I didn't change things. I wrote it. And then I'm like, we're going to put this out into the world. The other thing that you talked about process, and something that maybe, I don't know if you discovered, naive as I was going into the book writing process, I assumed that was the journey. Now we launched the book in September. I realized that's half the journey. Now you have to promote it and let the world know about it. And I'm not sure what I was really thinking. And my goal at that time was just get the book published, and just didn't realize how much work is involved once the book is out in the world.
And I know that's a hard thing, because the promotional arm, it's a wild thing. Like I'll tell you something funny. Everybody has publishers and everything, and one thing that gets forgotten, I tell this to every author that comes on the show. When we were kids and we were taught about the library and the catalog and everything, every state library. So, like, let's take Pennsylvania for instance. That's Harrisburg, Pennsylvania is the state capital. If you're in that state capital's library and you have the ISBN to a book, right? You can ask them to get it in the state capital only there. So Virginia, Richmond, West Virginia, Charleston, just naming a few places near me right now. I can get a state capital with your ISBN, right? Request it, and they'll get one book for all 55 counties in West Virginia. I forgot how many are in Pennsylvania. It's a lot, but that's a way to get someone's book, put out there in the world. And sometimes I've learned that that's how some books that we don't think should be bestsellers, because some books that you're like, and it happens that way because imagine it, West Virginia is a small state, 1.5 million people, but they have over 120 libraries. So that's a lot of libraries for a small area.
Yeah.
But, 120 books going somewhere, that's a crazy thing.
Wow. I didn't know you could do that.
Like I tell everybody, when we were in school And we first went to the library, they told you about different things, how to request books, and they told you about things on the state and local level. Like this was stuff we learned by fourth grade. And I just always find it amazing that everybody, like, I mean, I've met probably maybe 300 people in my travels in the last 10 years that will remember that. But that is something to remember. But anyway, going forward. Now, you have to balance life. And balance in life for you is you have multiple businesses, the realty group or company, the title company, and the property management brokerage. How do you handle that and still maintain personal growth and growth of your family? And the reason I ask you that is because in my situation, my son lives with his mother. So he sees me and I'm part of his life, but if I had him on a full-time basis, I don't know how I could balance everything I do from podcaster to the management part that I do to, the other things that I do. Like I have four, like you have a few different titles to my name. And I'm like, I know that sometimes I get a little bit of time, like 15 minutes a day to myself, and I just sit back and I'm like, it was a good day, even if it's a bad day. But how do you balance all of that?
Well, so I only had the one company, the brokerage. Did I have property management? I had property management too. I had the two companies while I had my girls in the house. I was a single mom. I raised the two children,
Okay.
but then they left the coop and I started the other companies. So it was just the two. And, real estate's very forgiving. It's not like your job where you're traveling and it's more corporate. People are, my children went with me everywhere. I worked out of the house for most of my career until they left for school, for college. So I had my business set up in my garage. I had a big garage and we just made it the corporate office. So I was physically home, and that was one of the reasons I got into real estate. I got into real estate when I found myself suddenly single and divorced when they were 1 and 2. And I knew I had to have something that was really flexible. So that the industry does support that, I think. The other thing for me is I'm just incredibly intentional about my time. I really don't say yes to a lot of things unless it's consistent with my core values. And so that weeds out a lot of time wasted. And I think when people do that, they'll find they have plenty of time to do what's valuable to them.
And we forgot one title. We forgot one title. You do some philanthropy, even though you may not want to call that. And me and you both, on a personal note, I know a great deal about the discrepancy and disparity in the housing market in your area.
Mm-hmm.
Because I've seen different things, and I just want to throw this side note in there because I've seen the wildest thing coming from where I come from, and coming down there to Florida. Like I noticed, like this one thing, a trailer, for instance, a trailer that's built in that area is not the same trailer that you'll find in North Carolina, Virginia, and the parks that you all have. Outside of buying a home and stuff, I noticed that a lot of people cramp into those, and something there that probably be in Virginia $50,000 or less than that turned into a six-figure piece of property or housing. And just even looking at the different areas, like I was telling you about Williston, well, all those areas, and we talked about the plantation. We didn't get to talk about that, but talking about all those areas and seeing, like you said, that income ratio that's different.
Mm-hmm.
What made you want to start your philanthropy in educating and helping families with this housing insecurity that they?
Yeah. Well, when I was in Philadelphia, um, I got my master's in Philly, and one of the classes, ironically or oddly, I think, was it was a course, and we got to go into West Philadelphia, gut out row homes, rehab them with donated supplies and labor, and then interview at-risk families and quote unquote sell these homes to those families at cost, which was minimal cost because most of the things were donated. And I got to see in my early 20s firsthand how housing can truly change the trajectory of a family. And I remember that when I decided to switch into real estate. And I love that you can impact somebody's family like that. And so um, when the businesses were solvent enough to be able to then pursue something else, I wanted to be able to replicate that in this town, in this area, and allow my agents and staff to be a part of it. So they get to work alongside. We help build houses with Habitat for Humanity, and we get to meet the future homeowners and work alongside them and their families building the home that they're going to live in. So I really wanted to share that experience with the people that I work with every day, so they too can see what they do really does change lives.
And how can the audience be involved and help if they would like to help with this?
Yeah, that's great. So, well, we have a website, pepinegives.com. So you can donate on the website. You can come volunteer with us on our build days. We always love having volunteers. We participate in the Amazing Gives and Giving Tuesday, the online giving platforms. And we also have two major events every year. One's coming up, pickleball, a big pickleball tournament every April. And then we do a big golf tournament every December. And we fundraise for Pepine Gives to help us sponsor these houses.
And I thank you for that, because giving back to the community like that helps people, because some people don't have. And when I say this audience, I'm talking about the type of literacy, like the literacy to know about housing and stuff like that. Because me and you both probably were raised like this. You go to work, you go to school, or you go to school, get the good job. You learn how to brokerage your money, because we were taught home economics when we were still in school. You know, and we were taught how to get a credit line with a bank and do those type of things, not get a issued credit card. I want to clarify that I said a line of credit with a bank, and go on and buy our houses. And then we were taught the difference between being sufficient and then being proficient. And then from that point we learned that you know efficiency and proficiency go together, and once you're efficient, that proficiency should always carry on in what you do. And not everybody gets that, and for you to give that back to people, I like that. Now we got to twist this around real quick, because what you're doing is a social impact, and entrepreneurs in their businesses need to know how to incorporate this into what they do. So what advice would you give an entrepreneur that wants to have a social impact with their business like you're doing?
Mm-hmm. I'm a big proponent of finding a mentor who's done it before you, and that's what I did. I connected with a colleague out in Texas, and I flew out there, met him, toured his facility, and he just gave me the nuts and bolts of everything he had done, the mistakes he made, and learn from him. I'm a big believer that you don't have to reinvent the wheel. So find people in your industry that have done something similar that you want to do, and pick their brains, learn from them, and then create your own model.
Yeah, like that. Hey, you're fine. Now, Betsy, we pay homage on this show to a news magazine that I grew up with on Friday nights. Before I started playing sports when I was a little kid, my mom and dad let me watch TGI Friday. And then they let me stay up till 10 o'clock at night. And this amazing news magazine called 2020 came on. 2020 had John Stossel on there, had Elizabeth Vargas, Diane Sawyer. He was poignant with her interviews, but it had one majestic lady, the late, great Barbara Walters. And Barbara Walters, she had two levels to her. One, the newscast would let her go on until 11:05 if she was doing a really good interview. If she did a flat interview, they cut her off at 11 o'clock, because you can't be great all the time. So
Yeah.
this growing up too. And I always wondered, and this is a sidebar, who cares about the news on Friday night? I don't, if your kids are, sitting up watching this news magazine, just let them watch it and turn the news on later. Or if you need to catch the sports scores, catch them later. But anyway, it's just another side note. So are you ready for your 2020 questions?
Sure.
All right, so here's your first one. This is John Stossel. This is a fun question. When you get up in the morning, what is the first thing you do?
When I put my 2 feet down, I say thank you, and then I say to the universe, how may I serve?
Okay, now after you do that, what is the first beverage that enters your body?
Water is about the only beverage that enters my body.
All right, I'm thankful for that, because I thought you were going to tell me coffee or anything. I had one person, and I had one person, a business professional, right, tell me that their day starts with Mountain Dew. And I'm like, whoa.
Yeah, no, I'm not. I've never had a cup of coffee. The smell, it does not interest me, so I've never even tried it. But no, just I'm a water girl.
Okay, so at 12 o'clock, what does your lunch consist of?
Well, my lunch is usually around 10:30 because I wake up really early, and so I'm starving by 10:30. So that's usually lunch. But lunch is usually a salad or soup or a sandwich, just something I put together quickly. It's nothing fancy.
Okay, now after you're done what type of pollution do you put in your body? And I'm going to give you an example of this. Some people have this pollution like this. This is what I do. I watch old nostalgic shows. I take my 30-minute lunch break. Well, I get an hour for lunch. I take 30 minutes of my lunch, and if I got some device with me, I might watch Mama's Family or something from my childhood, right?
Yeah.
But I do it because it's comedy that I remember from my childhood, and it makes me remember a family member that may be deceased or something like that. So
Mm.
I do that every day. I watch that, and then I'm done. That's a pollution I put in my body because I'm like, it's a good pollution, or well, it's not a good pollution, but it's pollution that's not going to hurt anybody, and it's not going to, put anything
Yeah.
negative into the world. So, what type of pollution do you put in your body?
So that's funny you said that because just the other day, I don't watch much TV, much. I don't have TV, but I have a couple of streaming platforms and I don't watch much of it. But I did watch Love Boat because Love Boat was the same. It had the same feeling. Like I grew up watching Love Boat and it was so nice. I got to see the very first episode of Love Boat. But for pollution, like I told you, I like to learn. And so I usually just go on YouTube. Like right now I'm on this kick. I'm a aspiring artist. I mean, I'm not good at all, but I really like to do it. And so I will watch YouTube videos on people doing art to learn their techniques and tricks.
Okay, and that's a good one. Now, I want to tell you something. The reason why that was a John Stossel question, because as soon as you said the Love Boat, a smile came on your face. I hadn't seen the whole time we've been talking. So I was like, wow. And that's where John Stossel would catch people. Now, let's move on to Elizabeth Vargas. You spent 5 years dismantling these boxes in your life, stepping into authenticity. How do you continue to ensure you're living authentically every day?
Um, well, I'm still, it's a process. I haven't arrived. And it's the constantly checking in with my emotions and making sure that they are in alignment. But I still occasionally find myself out of alignment and I've got to check myself and make sure that I'm saying yes to the things that are consistent with my core values.
Okay, I like that. Now, this is your Diane Sawyer question. Now, this one is really really technical. Now, we all have this word that causes issues in our life, and that word success. Some people deem success as a measurement. Some people deem success as an adjective. Some people make it a noun. Everyone does something with success. Me personally, just so you can get a while to get your stuff together for your success that you're going to talk about, I consider success to be a lesson learned. I like to have a mistake. I like to have what people would call a failure because that's a success for me. And I like for someone to tell me a no because when you tell me no, that means I got to make a new opportunity out of that. So that's what
Mm.
no always means to me, new opportunity. I don't want success to ever have any type of connotation of negative or positive. I just want it to be like you said, like a teaching, basically.
Mhm.
If something comes to fruition from it, that's great. If something doesn't come from it, it's that lesson learned. So at the end of the day, I can look at it and may
Mhm.
not only be something tangible, but I can see it and be like, hey, this wasn't
Mhm.
for me. And then, like I said, put it in my memories museum or exit stage left with it or sentence stage left. So, what
Mhm.
does success mean to you? And just define it for me if you don't mind.
I like what you said, but for me, success is very simple. It's more like a verb, but um, did my presence make a positive impact in someone's life today? And that's how I measure success.
Okay, I like that. Now, this is your Barbara Walters question. You're going to get two of these. There was a young Betsy at one point, and there's still a young Betsy in front of me now. Um, when you were 15 or 16, going maybe it was probably 19 or 20 for you, or maybe a little bit later because you went to pre med and stuff. There was a point that you knew that you weren't going to go in that linear expression that your family had built. And it was a certain type of pressure. There was a certain type of mode and mean that you had to get out of. You had to break the shackles off and really figure out one of the hardest things in the world was this: will I still be accepted in my family? It's not
Mhm.
about the love or anything like that, but it's the acceptance. Because when we don't have acceptance, it doesn't matter if you have the greatest self esteem or any of that stuff. Acceptance is the first thing that we clinch to. Even though
Mhm.
everybody wants to go away from that and say that, no, we need to be accepted somewhere. So when you made that choice to make the jump, to
Mhm.
no longer be in pre med, to get into a different form of business and in life, did you fear not being accepted?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I mean, that was a incredible fear of mine, a very real one. Um, my parents were very disappointed when I actually did tell them. But yeah, but it came to a point where saying yes to them was saying no to me. And I couldn't do that. I couldn't do it.
And that's the gem inside this episode on listeners, viewers. I want you all to take that one spot right there, cut it up and keep that clip, because that's someone being authentic and being truthful. When you're not accepted by the people that raised you, that watched you go through every milestone for that one moment, but they come back around because you have your Phoenix Rising episode that has to come out of this. They see your worth at the end of the day. So when your parents got to the point where they saw your worth, what was the comment they came to you with when they saw the grand scheme of things? They saw the picture that they couldn't see when you told them this information.
Well, I struggle with that because they told me they were not going to, that I could, fine, go into real estate, but that I wasn't going to be their realtor. Yeah. And that really hurt. They were going to use the realtor that they hadn't bought a house in 4 years, but they were going to use that realtor. And it was only after I was successful in real estate did I feel accepted, by them, and kind of I elevated my status in the family. And that was very shallow to me. It didn't feel good because, I think that's where I've struggled, is that, you started this conversation with, am I enough? And I had struggled with that. And now I know I'm enough, but them only accepting me when I had reached a certain level, sent the message that I wasn't enough until I had accomplished something, that we're not enough just by who we are. And that's something that I don't want to carry forward. I want to stop that generational belief. I believe we're the child of the Most High God, and it doesn't matter what we do in terms of external success. We are enough. We're made enough.
And I thank you for that. That's very powerful. And the last question I want to ask you, because that was a two-part one question there, is this. Now that you're at an echelon, because we'll never say you're at the full top, at the top, you're just at a little peak and you're going to keep going. Since you're at a certain echelon now, what is the next step for you in your own personal growth?
Well, every day I like to take myself outside my comfort zone. And so right now for me, that's making an identity shift. And I have started. I mean, I'm no longer seen just as real estate. I'm branching out into personal development. Through the book, a lot of speaking opportunities have opened up. And so I'm moving into that direction, into more public speaking, and not only in leadership and business, but also personal development, which is just something near and dear to my heart. So that's kind of the next step for me in my journey.
Okay, and I appreciate that. Thank you for that there. And that works out really good. Now, you've completed those questions, and then this is the last question I want to ask you before I give you a testament of what I've perceived and I feel about you. If you could leave my listeners, not my listeners, your listeners, our listeners, everyone's listeners, with one message about uncovering their own boxes, living a more fulfilled life, what would it be?
I think the message would be of courage, of wanting people to understand that it is so worth the effort. Everyone has fears. Write them down. They're all manageable. When you write things down, they become so much more clear, and you realize that's not so bad. Worst case scenario is not so bad. Like you said, worst case scenario, it doesn't go like I expected, but I learned a great lesson that I'm going to use to move forward. So take that courage and be true to yourself by saying yes to yourself. I think what a lot of us, myself included, don't realize is when we say yes to others, always ask yourself, what am I saying no to when I say yes? And make sure that trade-off is worth it.
Oh man, that was powerful. Now, here goes my testimony for you, real quick. And this is real simple. We're not going to use the word perseverance, fortitude, or any of that kind of stuff. We're going to just be plain, simple, and flat with this one. You were courageous. People saw a golden plated house or a platinum house, but you were living in a glass house and no one could see it. You knew it, you felt it, and you decided to share it with the world. The complexity of this so-called perfect life and following this formula of A to Z to make your life successful works, but no one ever understands this one thing. And this is the thing that has bothered me so much in my podcasting career and in my life. I did an episode about, and you are a part of this, the middle and the upper middle class. People, we always talk about the rich and the impoverished. You never talk about what goes on in the middle, what happens to the people, I'm not talking about the political side and the heavy tax dollars that we pay. I'm not talking about that, but I'm talking about like what actually goes on with us and why we have to make decisions on like how you give back with your philanthropy. Um, the things that you dealt with, even though you did everything, you followed all the checks in the boxes that society had set for you. People don't understand that when you're in the middle, it's the hardest place to be, and you understand that, and you're letting people know that.
Mm-hmm.
And when you get to the upper part of the middle, it's way worse because then people are going to look to you to that you owe the rich and the poor. In the middle just sits beside you and laughs because they're like, we're doing what you're doing, but whatever. So thank you for exploring and letting this out in the world because people don't get this side of the world. And that's why I was really happy to have you on here because being in that middle, upper, lower, whatever, but just being in that class and then working your way up further or down, back down, you know, it's a hard place to be in. And explaining that, telling the virtues of raising your daughters, um, being focused on a whole area without focusing every day on yourself in some instances. Because I know there's sometimes that you had to focus on everywhere. We can go east to west in Central Florida, and you cover all of that. And that's a hard thing to do. So I want you to, next time when you wake up or your feet touch the floor, you're 10 toes down and you get to the mirror, look at yourself and let yourself know that you're amazing because not everybody's going to do that. Some people are going to be like me. They're going to be selfish. When I was with that bigger company, I made a choice that I know hurt a lot of people, but I couldn't take that kind of stress anymore. Did those people survive? Yes. But like you said, the no that I put there and the yes that I said to the other company, somebody got hurt and somebody was made happy. And those are the choices, the consequences, the repercussions, all that other stuff that goes along with it, the chain reaction that you have to deal with. And you put this out there for the world. You have it in your book. You explain what goes on. And not a lot of people will do that. A lot of people will be selfish and gatekeep that. You are giving people the success and the failure at the same time. And in doing so, I want to commend you on that because not a lot of people will do that. A lot of people, like you said, that lead generating book, they would want the success. They would want to know everything there. You let us know about personal issues. Even in this interview, you told us about shame in an instance. And not a lot of people would put that type of energy out there into the world for people to know that, hey, I had a form of imposter syndrome because of my direct family. And you're still getting over it today. You're working through it right now. And you know now that you're enough. You know that you're great. But sometimes when you don't put your hair in a ponytail and it's behind you and you let it down, you see it again. Because like always, listeners and everybody, remember, you put your hair in a ponytail, it's behind you. So keep it that way. And if you don't, it just goes that way. So I want to tell you this, Betsy. I thank you for coming on West Virginia Commonplace. And I want to thank you for telling me your story today and providing the world with a book, providing services across Central Florida. And we know one day it'll expand everywhere. You might take it from Florida all the way to Texas. You never know. So in closing on this show, I need you to leave the show with this. You gave us a message, but we need you to finish the show with your mission statement. The mission statement or the mantra that aligns with you that you want the listeners, the viewers to take with them and go forward in life and then meet you and greet you on the sites and everything that will be in the show notes. Because that's a great thing about doing a podcast. There's two parts to it. There's a video, there's the audio, and then there's a reading portion. So 3 senses get touched. So please lead us out with your closing mission statement.
Yeah, my mission statement for my life and for all of my businesses is to improve and empower the lives of others. Very simple and very direct, and that's what I strive to do every day.
All right. She's Betsy and I'm JR, and we're going to let the British lady do her outro.
Please follow WV Uncommonplace on Instagram, Tumblr, Twitter, TikTok, where we have some great content, Facebook, LinkedIn. Hit up the merch store at oncommonplace.square.site. Join the email list from the website, and rate, subscribe, and give feedback from your favorite podcatcher. And lastly, thanks for listening, and tune into the next episode.